Hi, my name is Elle Billing. I am a chronically ill queer femme, and I'm tired. I'm here this episode and every episode to dig at the roots of our collective fatigue, explore ways to direct our care in compassionate and sustainable ways, and harness creative expression to heal ourselves and our world. And welcome to HORF, Radical Care in a Late Capitalist Hexscape. My guest today is Karina Blackheart. Karina Blackheart, the Crone Herself, is a woman's leadership and whole life evolution priestess. Using effective spiritual inquiry and practices, she guides women of all ages to take ownership and responsibility for the fullness of their personal, spiritual, and collective power. She creates kind and courageous containers for women who are ready to engage in reclamation of their divine selves, so they can choose to live more fully, unapologetically, and creatively. You can find more about her at thecroneherself.com. I am so excited to have her here on the podcast today. Welcome to Karina. Hi, Karina.
Hi, Elle. How are you?
I'm here. And I think you are here too. I think we're both kind of in it today, but I'm really happy to see you. And it is wonderful to have you on HORF today.
It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we've had to reschedule a couple times. And I always feel like when something happens is when it's supposed to happen, especially with something like this. And so I'm really glad that we're able to chat today.
Me too.
Yeah, it's great to see.
Too.
So my first question for you is, how have you received care this week?
How have I received care this week? Well, I have, I'm positive for COVID right now.
Oh dear.
So I've had some down days of giving myself care, right? Giving myself permission.
Yep, absolutely.
To just lay down, just go to bed. Like I can't accomplish anything anyway, right? Because my brain was so foggy. But my lovely housemates were like, "What do you need? Do you need anything? Like, yeah, could you go to the store? If you're going to town, could you pick me up this? Could you pick me up that?" And so, not having to go out. I live 45 minutes from a store. Okay. So not having what you need when you're sick is a really big deal.
Yes.
So it was just little things like, could you pick me up some sorbet? Because I want something sweet and cold, but not dairy, please, because I'm like,
already phlegmy.
Yeah. And I think just sort of keeping the house quiet for my youngest kid and myself, because my youngest kid, Esme, also has COVID.
Oh,
so
I'm sorry to hear that.
But our housemates live in the upstairs apartment, and I've noticed that they've made an extra effort to be kind of quiet so that we could rest. So I think that that's good care. That's good caring from the people that live in my house.
That is really good.
Yeah.
I live in a rural area as well. There's like a couple little rural towns nearby with little stores. So whenever I go grocery shopping or run errands, pick up prescriptions or whatever, my mom always asks me to pick her up a Reese's. Her favorite candy bar is Reese's peanut butter cups, and she always wants Reese's. Even if there's like some in the cupboard, she wants me to bring home like a fresh candy bar. And so that's like a little thing that I can do for her.
Yeah. When you live in the middle of nowhere, you need backups of everything.
Yes, including
right?
Reese's. Yep.
Absolutely.
And so yesterday she needed a haircut. And so that's when we made like the hour-long trek into the city so she could get her haircut. And then we had to run some errands for my sister's wedding, which is in a month. Well, and by the time this actually releases, my sister will be married.
Congratulations,
Yay!
Elle's sister.
So we ran some errands, and it ends up being like a 4-hour, 5-hour trip because we have to go do all the things that we can't do in our little town. And by the time we got home, we were both so wiped out. We just like collapsed in the chairs, the recliners in the living room. We're like, we are going to bed early tonight.
Yeah. Fridays are my traditional run errands day, and it's always 5, 6, 7 hours. And by the time I come home, like I message my kid and I'm like, I'll be there in 40 minutes. Be ready to help me unpack the car. And I am already hangry, right?
Yes.
I'm so hungry. that I'm angry. So please have something ready that I can just put in my mouth so I don't lose my mind, right? Because my blood sugar is so low. And then it's bed.
Yep. And
Yeah.
we always call my dad to let him know we're heading home. And he was out in the field when we called. And so we didn't know who was going to make it back to the house first. And we actually made it home at almost the exact same time. He was out
Nice.
throwing the ball for the dog when we pulled in. And so the dog hadn't eaten dinner yet. All that had happened was he had let my dog out to go to the bathroom and play ball a little bit to get her energy out because she'd been in the house on trazodone all day because she gets separation anxiety when nobody's home.
Speaking of dogs.
Yeah. What timing. My dog can't hear me talk about her because she's deaf. But your dog was like, I hear someone talking about dogs.
My dog is really mad because I have her locked out of the space right now.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I lock my dog out of here too, and she'll whine at the door, but she kind of knows now if the door is closed that she's not going to get in anyway.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about the crone herself. You identify as a crone. Tell me about what that is.
Well, a crone is a woman who is, or a person who is postmenopausal, has had a life,
has seen some shit.
Has seen some shit, has lived through some stuff, and has gained some wisdom from that. I'm 58 years old. I'm starting my Saturn return, my second Saturn return, which is interesting. I thought that I was already through it because I had been through some big transformations in the last few years. And then I signed up for the Chani Nichols astrological app and put in my data and realized my Saturn return started in March on the date that I launched the Crone Herself.
Okay.
Yeah. So being a crone to me means we have a different kind of energy, a different approach. I think that as we get older, we just give less fucks. And I know that in our 40s, when we start saying that, we're really mad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep, I hear you.
Comes out with spit and, I don't give up, about anything anymore. I've given my last one away. And I think how I feel at my age now is I just don't care about that.
Okay.
It's just knowing. It's not even anger anymore. It's just a quiet acceptance of there's stuff that I don't care about, that I can't do anything about. And so what do I care about? As we move through that period of I don't give a fuck, right? Part of moving through it is understanding, coming to know what we do really care about, what we're really invested in, right? And understanding for me, it took till I was 52, I think, before I realized oh, this really isn't middle age. My mom died when she was 80.
Yeah.
And so 52 isn't middle age in my gene pool, right? And I thought, oh, you're 2/3 done.
Yeah.
And so that was really sobering and had its own levels of acceptance, but also saying, okay, so if you've got 30 years left,
what are you going to do with them?
What are you going to do with that? Are you going to keep doing what you've been doing? What has to change? And really looking forward into my older years, and being I'm looking at one of my bathrooms in my house and thinking, yeah, when that gets renovated, that's going to need a walk-in shower.
Yes. Okay.
Right? Planning in advance for understanding that my mobility is not going to be what it is now. And it certainly right now is not what it was even 5 years ago. I had long haul COVID. So, I deal with still some results of that.
I'm 20 years younger than you, and I'm sitting here resonating with so much of this. And I think I haven't gone through menopause yet, but I have had to deal with chronic illness and acquired disability. I wasn't born with a disability, but I acquired it during my 20s and 30s. And so I'm resonating with a lot of what you're saying. And the thing about the walk-in shower, I live with my parents and my dad has a walk-in shower. When he renovated his bathroom, he was like, I don't want to step into a tub anymore. I'm old. My knee hurts.
And they're slippery.
Yeah. And I'm going
Yep.
to, so he has a walk-in shower. I shower in my dad's bathroom because I don't want to
Yep.
step into a tub either. My
Yep.
mom still steps into a tub, and we're trying to convince her to just put a shower bar in.
Yep.
I'm like, why don't we get one of those, like, if you want a tub that bad, get one with like the door, like they show on TV, like it's a
Yep.
soaking tub with like the door. And she's like, oh, those are for old people. I was like, you are almost 70. Like, there's nothing wrong with aging. It is a natural thing that happens, hopefully, to all of
Right.
us.
It's a privilege.
And bodies change, and we are very concerned about you slipping and falling.
Yep.
And those
Yep.
tubs have jets. Why don't you want jets in your tub? It'll feel so good.
I am a bath aficionado, okay? Like, I take a bath every day. I never take a shower unless I've been out working in the garden, and I know that I'm just, like, covered, right? And I just want all the dirt and all of the everything off of me. But, like, I'm not looking forward to the day that I only have a shower.
Yeah.
But I also have to plan for that or get a hydraulic lift to get me in and out of the bathtub or something.
And I
But
know people who need lifts to be
yeah,
bathed, and
yeah,
that is okay too,
yeah,
because different bodies need different things.
absolutely. I worked as a nurse for many, many years, doing elder care
Mhm.
and hospice care. So I'm also aware that there are things out there that help people get around, right?
Yeah.
When you can't do it by yourself. And, this thing that you said about like so much of what I was saying about like planning for older age, right? That you are already experiencing. And I think that one of the things that I'm trying to get across in my messaging as the crone herself is that it's an attitude and it's an energy,
Mhm.
right? And so you don't have to be 58 or 72 or 104, right?
Mhm.
To access this particular energy, right? Of like being really centered and grounded in who you are. Know that you're okay, right?
Mhm.
Not that we don't ever have more, and I'm putting air quotes up, more personal work to do.
Mhm.
But I think that there's something in our culture where we are constantly picking at ourselves to change, right? To evolve, to grow. And that's certainly part of what I help people do in the crone herself. But I hope that I'm doing it in such a way that it doesn't feel like ripping scabs off of wounds, right? And just
Yeah.
reopening things because so much of our, in the subcultures that I operate in, there's a lot of folks who are just like, we drive ourselves crazy with self improvement.
Mhm.
And I want us to be gentler. And I think that that's a big piece of what I'm doing in the crone herself is like, yeah, we have places that we can improve. We have things that we need to look at so that they can heal. But can we do it without self abusing? Can we do it without self harming? Can we do it without calling ourselves names? Can we approach ourselves with love, with compassion, with the kind of gentleness that we do other people when we see that they're struggling? And I think that that's one of the things that evolved for me over my 50s is this softening of like, oh, I'm okay. Am I perfect? What is that? It doesn't exist. There's a phrase out there that people say, oh, hurt people,
Mhm.
and healed people heal people. And I'm like,
Oh.
point me to a person that's healed. Point me to a person that is healed. Healing people are healing people. We're never finished. And so knowing that there is no perfect Karina,
Mhm.
however the culture defines perfect, or however my family of origin might define perfect, right? Or however some of my subcultures that I belong to define perfect. I'm okay.
Mhm.
Even if some days I wake up and I don't feel great about myself, even if I'm being confronted, like I'm so relieved that we're not doing this on camera. I just don't like the camera.
Yeah.
I don't have to say I'm insecure or, any of the other diagnoses that people might come up with. about why I don't want to be in front of a camera. I just don't like it. I'm not used to it. I'm 58. We didn't grow up with it with our faces on camera. We grew up with
Yep.
snapshots. And so letting that be and letting myself be soft about that and be like, yeah, if I have to be on camera, I can. When I say that I'm a crone, I'm
Mhm.
saying I feel okay about myself. I feel okay about all that I've been through, all that I've lived through, the relationships I've had that worked or didn't work, the decisions I've made. I'm okay. That's not something that we hear a lot of people say.
Yeah.
It's okay to be me as I am right now. When I talk about Big Crone Energy, right?
Mhm. I love that.
That's what I'm talking about, right? Is yes, Big Crone Energy can be, outrageous and loud and like bright pink, like my website,
Mhm.
right? It can be Iris Apfel, right? In her, fashionista mode, right? But Big Crone Energy can be picking blueberries, can be taking the dog for a walk, can be like, you know what? It's 2 in the afternoon. I need my nap. Big Crone Energy to me means centering yourself as an important person that you have to care for in your daily round, not last on the list, not deprioritized to the level where you're not getting enough rest, getting enough nutrition, hydrating, exercising, doing spiritual practice, right?
Yeah. When I think of the old trope of, like, the village witch or the village sorceress or the village crone, she was who she was, like, and she was always fine with whatever people said about her or didn't say about her, or she just did her thing and took care of other people when they needed it, but she also, like, was very she had a cozy little house,
Mhm.
where she took care of herself too, like, cottage or her house, and this is very stereotypical, right? Like,
Sure, it's an
I'm painting
archetype.
with a very broad brush. Yeah, it's an
Yep.
archetype, but, like, her home was well stocked and cozy and full of warm, tasty food, and, like, it's a place that you'd wanna go, and it's because it's a place she wanted to be too. Like, she
Yeah,
created a home for herself that, like, she liked to be in. She didn't take care of others at the expense of her own needs. She was taking care of herself and also taking care of the people around her.
right. But she was also dangerous.
Yes. That's a good point.
Right? So there's that. That's all true, and it's also true that she was also a character of suspicion
A force to be reckoned with.
because she was taking care of herself, because she was putting her needs first. Because she would have boundaries, "Hey, you kids, get off my lawn," right?
"Don't eat my house."
Right? "Don't eat my house." So, when we're talking about, the cultures that that archetype comes
Yeah.
from, right? A woman of age, past childbearing years, without a man, if she had a cozy home, she owned it.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
So there's like all of these economic and gendered, right?
Mhm.
Places where she is outside the norm. And being outside the norm makes you dangerous. You are a threat to the status quo. And so this is why we have this sort of conflicting idea about older women. I was just writing this morning about a conversation that I had with a friend when I was just starting the Crone Herself. And she said, "You're not a crone." And I just looked at her and she goes, "I'm older than you. I'm not a crone." And I said, "What's a crone?" And she said, like a mean old lady who lives in the woods and doesn't have any teeth and she's, scary. And I was like, you and I are both old women who live alone in the woods. you know? And she said, "No, no, no, you have to be like 80." And I thought, well,
That's
we're not
arbitrary.
middle-aged, right?
Yeah.
There's a fear of that word, right? Which of course, me being who I am, that's why I want to use it, right?
Right.
Not because I want to scare people, but because I want to educate people. I want to look at like, why is that word scary? Why are old women scary? Why do we want to be like, I don't ever want to be like that. Meanwhile, when we're in our 30s and 40s, we're like, I just want to be independent. I want to have my time to myself.
Right.
I want to be able to wear what I want to wear and say what I want to say. And it's like, that's what a crone is.
And when I think about what you were saying about just being okay with who you are, I think that is dangerous to the status quo because then we're not consumers anymore. If we are okay with who we are, then all of the marketing around us, which is all designed to tell us to point out something that's wrong with us so then we can purchase the thing designed to fix it. If we're okay with who we are not going to be good consumers anymore. And that is very
Right.
dangerous to the status quo. If we don't give a shit
Yes.
about, our hair turning gray, or as I sit here with blue hair, but like but if we don't give a shit about our hair turning gray or about this season's, Pantone's color of the year or
Hmm.
any of these things that are designed to keep us in that perpetual state of consumption,
Right.
that is frightening and threatening to the people who are running the machines that take our money.
Hmm. Hmm. So why do you think that when you retire, you only get, a little bit of Social Security? Right? Like these things are all connected,
Yeah.
right? Our assumptions about what old people need and that, I mean, right now, the boomer generation is old, right? And so there's a lot of stuff still being marketed to them.
Mhm.
And, Iris Apfel and her cadre of other old ladies,
Mhm.
right? Fifth Avenue fashionistas,
Martha
right?
Stewart, is
Martha
80
Stewart,
and she was just on
Sports
Sports
Illustrated.
Illustrated. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is, they're still trying to market to boomers, but I think it's really, really marketing to older women who have so much disposable income,
Mhm.
right? That you can walk out the door of your house wearing, like, I don't know how these old women stand up with the 80, necklaces that are all stones and beads and rocks.
But do you think some of that, especially when I think about Martha Stewart on Sports Illustrated, do you think some of that is a fear of age and a fear of aging and a fear of death? Because so much of it is like chasing or trying to retain or hold on to like youthfulness or the appearance of youthfulness or the energy and vitality of youthfulness.
Mhm. I think that when I read interviews of these women, because I'm very interested, right? Like, I don't want to get dressed up like that. I don't want to put all that makeup on. I don't want to try that hard.
I don't
Like,
even
I'm
wanna
so
wear like,
relieved that I don't have to try hard anymore. Nobody's looking at me. And maybe that's the thing is I don't care that no one's looking at me. I'm relieved that no one's looking at me, right?
yeah.
Um,
That's one of the great things for me about being non-binary is that, like, if I want to, I can be invisible.
yes.
Like, though I mean, at least the way that I present myself. Like, that's not true for everybody who's non-binary.
My eldest is non-binary and are as femme appearing as I was when I was their age. Um, and that's how they want to present,
Yeah.
you know? They call themselves a femboy,
Yeah.
right? And that's their non-binary presentation, and they do want people looking at them. They want to be visible. Um,
Like, I like getting dressed up, but I'm also very lazy. I'm a little fluid, and I just would rather no one notice me when I'm out.
yeah, I think that in my questionnaire, when you asked for gender pronouns, I said I'm perfectly happy to be gendered as a crone.
Yeah, I ask for, like, self-describing language because I interview all kinds of people, and so I leave that kinda
Mhm.
open-ended.
I want to talk about crone as non-binary
Cool.
because in patriarchy,
Yeah.
a woman has value until she's no longer childbearing.
Yes.
And there's a deep fear with some women about aging and becoming invisible. And for some women, this is the challenge of becoming older, right? Is
Mhm.
that the male gaze that we both, some of us disdain it, and some of us feel like that's some kind of affirmation that we still look good, right?
Mhm.
That we're still viable. um, and when the male gaze looks past you because you're a certain age, it's a tremendous blow to some women in their late 40s, early 50s. For me, I was like, "Oh my god, they're not looking at me." Finally, right? And, I've never been an exceptionally beautiful woman, but when I walk in a room and people don't stop to look at me, like I'm just a body in the space,
Mhm.
that feels so liberating to me,
Mhm.
right? And that the other piece about gender and I'm just this is I'm not giving you research. There's no research on this that I'm aware of. So fight with me if you want. But, as a single identified as female at birth person at 58 years old, right?
Mhm.
Who's had various sexual personas over my lifetime.
Mhm.
And now I don't give a crap about any of it. I'm just me.
Yeah.
And that again is so threatening to the overculture. What do we do with this person who is no longer of childbearing age, lives on her own, right? Kids are mostly grown.
Yeah.
My parents were way older than me, so they passed when I was in my early 40s,
Mhm.
right? So I'm not taking care of elder parents. All I have to do is take care of myself and be a menace to the patriarchy, right? So for me, identifying as a crone to all of those questions,
Yeah.
right? What's your gender? What's your sexual preference? Are you single, married, divorced? I'm like, I'm a crone. Like none of that matters to me.
Yeah.
I'm just doing what I do. If I feel like putting on flowy clothes that day, that's great. If I feel like being in a hoodie and a t-shirt because
Mhm.
I'm feverish, that's fine. I don't dress for other people. I dress for comfort, right? And what makes me feel good about myself, not for what expectations of others are. So to me, the word crone is about liberation,
Yeah.
you know?
So since we're talking about being a menace, I guess, that it seems like a very provoking word. And you have a program called Provocations with the Crone
I
herself.
do.
Um, I don't know if it's a menacing program. But Provocations has a very strong energy to it. Can you tell me what Provocations is going to be like?
Sure. I'm a wordsmith,
Yes,
right? I
yes.
love to play with words. I love to use them in surprising ways. Sometimes that works for me. Sometimes
Yeah,
not so much, right? Like we just talked about the word crone for how long.
yeah, it was great.
Um, so provoke can mean to incite an argument,
Right.
right? But it can also mean just to incite a response,
Mhm,
right? To elicit a response. And my language and my attitude and my mind have a tendency to do that. For a long time, I tried to make myself more palatable and use softer language and be less provocative. But it's my nature to be like that.
I think a lot of us go through at least some point in our life where we try to be less of some quality to be more palatable, be smaller,
Mhm.
be easier to take, and then we get to the point where we're like, "This isn't me."
And again, this is why the crone herself,
Yeah.
right? Because I want to own all of my parts.
Mhm.
And if that means that I have to unpack language for people,
Mhm.
so that's okay. It's an interesting conversation, I think, when we start looking at how language keeps us small and
Mhm.
how reclaiming language liberates us, empowers us. So calling myself a provocateur,
Mhm.
right, is understanding that I present challenging concepts, right? I present a challenge to the culture. And I'm challenging as a teacher, a priestess, a mentor. But I think it's also so important for people to hear my voice, right? Because you hear that language and you think, oh my God, she's going to come after me like a bulldog. And I'm not. I'm totally compassionate, loving, create beautiful containers for where people can be courageous and held. I don't think that when we're talking about personal change and development that we're ever talking about being safe. I don't know that I can promise people that the container is safe when we are literally pulling apart, pulling threads of your life. So provocation, right? It's provocations sort of came out of, I was looking at language like a murder of crows, right? A herd of buffalo.
A parliament of owls. Yeah, a journey of giraffes. I'm really into like
Yes.
group names like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at like when I was trying to name some of the programs and memberships in the Crone Herself. I mean, one is called The Conspiracy, right? It's a
Yep.
conspiracy of Crones. Provocations is a 5-part series of workshops. Provocation hopes to incite you toward self-love, self-care, empowerment, and a sense of like, I get to be my whole self. I get to be my whole self.
That sounds really great.
So we start with invoke, which is to call in, is to invite, right? In magic, an invocation is a usually kind of formal way of calling upon spirits, guides. So in that, this is the first part of the series is invoke, and we're invoking helpers to help us in this 5-part journey. So we're working with calling in the ancient goddesses, like the matriarchal, matrilineal goddesses that were considered to be the creatrixes, right? This was our first understanding. This was humanity's first understanding of where we came from. So calling in ancient helpers who I consider to also be our most ancient ancestors. If we ascribe to a belief that God is a mother, then we are all her descendants. And even if we don't ascribe to that belief, our most ancient ancestors did. So we're working and invoke with some of the ancient crone goddesses like Lilith, Baba Yaga, Hecate, and we're working with our own ancestral lineage, asking them to come and guide us and guard us in this work. And those archetypes, those crones that we just talked about, the old woman who lives in the woods in her little hut and it's so cute, that's Baba Yaga. That's Strega Nona. And Baba Yaga, we think of her maybe as a fairy tale, but she's a Slavic goddess. So how do the old mythologies of the old woman in the maiden mother crone story, as time goes by and the church comes in and people have to hide those beliefs, so they hide them in folk tales and in fairy tales. And here we are in 2023. We know their names still. Some people don't know their names. That's okay. So calling upon these forces to get to know them, to be like, what are your stories? How did you go from the great goddess to Hecate? The Greeks were colonizers, so their ideas spread all over what we now know as Europe. And how did those stories get translated, retold in new places, combined with more local iterations of these beings? And how do we reclaim these stories? Not because we want to be an old woman living in a cute hut in the woods. I happen to be that person.
It works great for you.
You saw a picture of my house, you'd be like, it is the old crone living in the woods. It's like cedar shingled and low roofed, and
I can see the little beams in your ceiling.
yeah, it's kind of overgrown, it's a little untended because I'm old, right? Like I can't do what I'm doing in the world and have pristine gardens. So in invocation, we're really just calling in, saying, come, I want to know you, and I need your help on this journey toward claiming my own big crone energy or life force or authenticity or sovereignty or whatever language it is that you love best to describe that you trust yourself.
Yeah. And then the next 4 parts will be the process of going through that.
The next part after invoke is evoke, which is to call up from within.
Oh, great.
Right? So now you've called in these beings,
Mhm.
our archetypal, ancestral, and ancient crone goddesses. Just like when we get to know another person, we go, oh, I know what that is. I do that.
Mhm.
I have that. I have that quality. Oh, I have that temper. I have that sense of humor. I like pizza.
Yeah.
And so evoke is a way for us to identify what is in us that resonates with these beings
Mhm.
and to find how to bring that up into our persona, into the decisions that we make. So we're drawing down,
Mhm.
but we're also pulling up
Yep.
from within ourselves these strengths, and they're meeting in us. We are becoming something that we weren't.
Yeah. Yep.
The next piece is provoke. When we change, when we evolve, transform, heal, we don't do it in isolation. It impacts our family systems. It impacts people in our workplaces. I just had a student visiting this weekend who said, I'm here for the weekend. And I told my job, I'm not available until Tuesday. And they said, well, your plane comes in on Monday. And she said, I'm taking a day to recover from travel.
Yeah.
I will see you Tuesday morning. And this is unheard of in her workplace to
Mhm.
be like, when the day is over, don't call me. When it's the weekend, don't call me. If I'm traveling, don't call me. There's a little pushback, but there's also some people younger than her that are like raising an eyebrow and going, oh, that's a thing
I could do that too.
that I can do. And so we, by our being, become that crone,
Mhm.
that challenge, that provocateur. It doesn't mean that, unless this is your style, getting in people's faces. It just means that we're minding our own business, doing things the way that we know is right for us.
Mhm.
It's subtle. It took this person a while to get to where she could say, I'm not doing that for my job.
Mhm.
So we become provocative. The next piece is initiate,
Mhm.
which is to own all of that. I am guarded, guided by these ancestral crones. I have called that forth from within myself. I have stepped toward my power by being a little provocative, a little challenging. And initiate is a time to recognize that and to really empower it and own it. And then after that is integrate. It's a thing that a lot of white cultures that offer initiatory processes, there's like the initiation and then you're done. But to initiate is to begin,
Mhm.
to do this without your teacher. And integration is a period that we need when we've made big changes. Like, how is that working
Yes.
for me? How does that feel? Did I go too far? Did I hurt myself? Did I hurt somebody else in this? And so I want there to be still post initiation,
Yep.
a container for people to check in not only with me, but with their cohort that they've been through this whole process with. So that's 5 weeks of like, how do we integrate? And then beyond that, for a year, a place on my website where people can be in contact with one another so that we're not just thrown out into the world, newly hatched crones with no support,
Right. No,
right?
that support integration and support are so important. Earlier
Yeah.
when you were talking about croneness being like, I am okay with myself, it reminded me a lot of a graphic a friend of mine had just shared on social media recently of, like you were saying, a lot of white spiritual practices, forget the integration part, and you end up with a lot of spiritual bypassing and a lot of hierarchy in labeling of emotions, feelings, and experiences, when really what we need is like that integration of our emotions, thoughts, feelings, and experiences, where like if I wake up feeling like garbage, or if like negative emotions aren't worse than positive emotions and feelings, like all of it, I am okay as I am. Like all of them are valid and worthy and useful.
Feelings are like weather. Well, to me, in the traditions that I'm from, an initiation is about power, claiming power. This power of myself is mine.
Yeah.
And we need spaces where we can talk to people, other people who are going through what we're going through as we claim power.
Yes.
And who are farther along the path than us and who are like, yes, I too remember when I overstepped my bounds, right?
Yeah.
I too remember when I spoke too passionately about something to the person who was just not ready to hear it.
Yeah.
So we want to be safe. We want to know that we are walking around with this new way of being in the world and that we have support for that. And not to go so fast with it that we wind up hurting ourselves. None of this is about hurting ourselves. It may be about unraveling some things, some patterns, some stereotypes, what I call the good girl manual, that we're handed about like that you just can't win. You can't please everyone, right? But we're taught that we're supposed to please everyone. And so dropping that is hard.
Yeah.
Hard, right? We want to be good. The edge of that is that by being a good girl, you also have the privilege of policing other women.
Yes. And we do great violence to other people.
Exactly. And we don't understand that it's violence because we think that we're being helpful.
Yep.
Because we're trying to get them in line. Like, don't talk so loud. Don't laugh so loud. Don't dress so loud. This is what white women say to Black women. We have to outgrow that.
We absolutely do. We have to completely dismantle it.
We have been indoctrinated to the level that we believe that that is helpful. When another white woman would tell me, don't take up so much space or don't be so confrontational or provocative, I would have to wrestle with that. Is that right? Someone a week ago said, I hate that you're so insecure. And I had to take 4 days, right? And be like, is that true? Am I still insecure? I think that I'm not. Am I? Is that true? Or is that somebody being like, I want to see you be like this?
Yeah.
Right? And having to wrestle with that. But white women have this contract with one another that we're allowed to do that to each other.
Well, and it's a contract with white supremacy and patriarchy.
Correct.
That we're going to enforce it.
But we don't know that.
Well, we do. You and I do. Yeah. But when we're doing it to other people, we don't necessarily realize it.
And that we're just trying to be good. We're just trying to be good girls.
Yeah.
Right. And help other people be good girls so that we're not in trouble. Right. So that we can keep our privilege. Because when you're a bad girl, your privileges are revoked. There are lots of economic and social punishments for women.
Privilege is a hell of a drug.
It is a hell of a drug, especially when you don't know that you're ingesting it.
Yeah. So when does Provocation start?
Provocation begins November 11th.
Okay.
The registration is open right now.
Okay.
You can find it at thecroneherself.com/invoke.
Okay.
Registration closes on November 8th. Payment plans are available, but please do contact me so I can figure out what will work best for you for that. You can get Invoke by itself. You can buy it with Evoke. So you can get both of those together for a little bit of a discount. And you can buy the whole 5-part package for a bigger discount. You do have to take Invoke and Evoke. It's a prerequisite for the other 3.
Great. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I had a wonderful time with this conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much.
A delight. And I hope you feel better soon.
I feel better today. Good. I'm probably going to go take a nap now. That was
Me
a lot.
Yeah, 2:00 is my nap time as well. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Hurf. To view the complete show notes and all the links mentioned in today's episode, or to get a full transcript of the episode, visit hurfpodcast.com. That's HOORF podcast.com. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you can receive new episodes right when they're released. And if you're enjoying our podcast, I'd love to have you leave us a review in Apple Podcasts. Reviews are one of the major ways that Apple ranks their podcasts, so even though it only takes you a few seconds, it really does make a difference for us. Become a patron. For $3 a month, you can support the creation of this podcast, pay my editor, and join a community of fellow caregivers out here just doing our best. Thank you again for joining me, Elle Billing, in this episode of Hoof. Until next time, be excellent to each other. Hoof is hosted by Elle Billing at Elle and Wink. Audio editing by Ricky Cummings at Ricky Poo. Music composed by Ricky Cummings. Hoof is a production of Elle and Wink Art Studio, all rights reserved. Hoof Podcast can be found on social media channels at Hoof Podcast, at HOORF Podcast.
Don't eat my house.